Today we are going to cover the midpoint formula. The midpoint formula and how to find the coordinates of a midpoint or endpoint. All right, the midpoint formula. Or the midpoint on a number line. A couple of different formulas here. We're going to start with midpoint push that door shut, please. All right, midpoint on a number line. If AB, if segment AB has endpoints x sub 1 and x sub 2. On a number line. Then the midpoint M of segment AB has a coordinate at, here's your formula. You take your x sub 1, your value of your x sub 1, plus the value of your x sub 2, and you divide it by 2. That's when you're finding the midpoint on a number line. So if you are given the instructions and your instructions say, find the midpoint, of AB. Find the midpoint of AB. Here's one example. Here's your segment. It's got point, yeah. Good. If you're asked to find the midpoint of segment AB, and segment AB looks like this, and it has coordinates, let's say that the A is at -4, and the B is at 7. In order to find the midpoint, the formula says to take the two endpoints and add them together and divide them by 2. All right. So in order to find the midpoint of segment AB, we're going to take -4, we're going to add it to 7, and we're going to divide it by 2. So -4 plus 7 is 3, and 3 divided by 2 equals 1.5. So this point right here, in this case, we're going to call it M, stands for the middle, is going to be at positive 1.5 on the number line. That's how you find the middle of a segment that's on a number line. You take the two endpoints, you add them together, you divide it by 2, and that value is the midpoint of your segment. Let's say your segment looked like this here. Had A and B, and you're finding the middle of A and B again. Let me see. I'll put those on top. A, let's say this is at negative 13. Let's say that point B is at negative 3. And you have to find the midpoint of this segment. All right, same deal. You take negative 13, you add it to negative 3, and you divide that by 2. So your negative 13 plus your negative 3 is negative 16. And negative 16 divided by 2 is equal to negative 8. So the middle of this segment, the midpoint of this segment, is going to be at negative 8. Everybody okay with finding the midpoint? That's on the number line. That's on a number line. Second thing we've got to be able to do is find a midpoint on the coordinate plane. Midpoint on the coordinate plane. The midpoint you're going to do the same thing, except you have to do it twice. You're going to use the same formula, except you're going to have to do it twice. Here's what I mean. When you're finding the midpoint on a coordinate plane, that's when your point has an x and a y value. You got 2 points on the coordinate plane. They have x, y values. You have to find the middle. So the midpoint on the coordinate plane is going to have an x and a y value. So in order to find the x value at the midpoint, you take your x sub 1 and you add it to your x sub 2 and you divide it by 2. And then in order to find the middle or the midpoint, the coordinate of y at the midpoint, you take your y sub 1, you add it to your y sub 2, and you divide that by 2. So here's an example. We've got to find the midpoint. M. Or let's see, find the midpoint, find the coordinates of the midpoint M. Find the midpoint M of segment ST for S is located at -6, 3. And T is located at 1, 0. When you're given this type of problem and you're finding the midpoint and you're dealing with X's and Y's, the first thing I want you to do is label these coordinates. Point S has coordinates -6, 3. So this is your X sub 1, and the 3 is your Y sub 1. Point T has X, Y values. The 1 is your X sub 2. And the 0 is your Y sub 2. And then you take those values and you substitute them back into this midpoint formula. So into this midpoint formula, it's going to look like this. Our M is going to be at our X sub 1, which is -6, plus 1 divided by 2. And our Y at the midpoint is going to be at 3 plus 0 divided by 2. So the midpoint of this segment with ST as endpoints, the midpoint is going to be at -6 plus 1. Good, that's -5 divided by 2. -2.5. 3 plus 0. Good, divided by 2. What's 3 divided by 2? 1.5. Positive 1.5. So there's your midpoint. Everybody see the difference between coordinate plane and number line? All right, when it's on the number line, you just have to do the formula once. Add the two endpoints together, divide them by 2. If your point is on the coordinate plane and each point has an X and Y value, well, then you have to do the midpoint formula for the X's, your two X values, add your two X values together, and then add your two Y values together and divide them both by 2. That gives you the midpoint. You guys all right with that? Okay. All right, so here's your practice problems for today. You're going to be in the book on page 30 and 31. You're going to be doing problems 7 through 10. And then on page 32, actually, this is just page 30. Page 30, you got 7 through 10. And then on page, let's see, 30, page 32, let's just scratch all this. I hate to be so confusing. Let's just take the whole assignment off page 32. It's going to be page 32, problems 33 through 44. All right, make sure you are showing all your work neatly.